Warning, the following video contains adult language and strong opinions about pottery. It may not be suitable for small children. This isn't your mama's pottery class.
Hi, it's Dominic from SperanoArts.com, and today we're going to go over how to trim a pot. I find that trimming is a pretty divisive subject. There are some people that love it, some people that absolutely loathe it and can't stand to do it. So I'm particularly going to be addressing today's lesson towards those who hate it and try and give you guys some pretty simple guidelines, so that way if you've been having trouble gauging thickness or how many passes you should do with your tools, or if you're just having trouble constantly putting a hole in your pot, I'm going to try and give you some things that are going to help you with that and make it a lot more easier and more enjoyable. Also going to go over some carving and decorative techniques for after you've trimmed. So that's what's coming up today on how to unfuck your pot. Alright, so here I have a thick cylinder that I have thrown. Alright, and I purposely kept this extra thick so that way I have a couple more than enough that I can do several passes in trimming, so I can give a couple of demonstrations on how to trim. Okay, and when it comes to trimming, the first thing that you need to do is make sure it is centered, and the easiest way to make it centered, as you can see from the top view here, is that I am putting it right in the middle of the wheel. I'm using these concentric circles to do it, and I can tell you it took me way too long to figure out to use the concentric circles, so I'm letting you know now, and I've let every student know that from the get-go. My old professor waited and waited for me to figure that one out, and when I finally did, he's like, took you long enough. So here I am telling you right now, use the concentric circles, make your life a lot easier. If you're really new to wheel throwing, your piece is going to be off-centered. That's just a given. But this will help at least get you used to the idea of centering. Now again, if you're new at wheel throwing, it's not going to be well centered, so don't try and kill yourself. Just get it as well as you can to centered. Okay? But as you get better and you keep your pieces centered, it's going to be easier to center the piece when it's time to trim it. There's a couple of methods. Some people will do this X method, and they'll use that as like quadrants. I don't really know how that method works, but if it works for you, if you've seen how to do it, go for it. Fine by me. I've seen people will slap it into place. That's an interesting way to do it. Perhaps it helps get your aggression out. I'm really simple. I just kind of anchor my fingers in one spot, and I just feel for it, see if it bumps. Okay. Now you might be able to tell it's just ever so slightly pulling away from my finger right about now. Okay, so as it's really touching a bunch, I'm going to stomp the wheel, and I barely move it. I move it maybe 1/16 of an inch, just enough. I learned that the hard way over trial and error. I don't need to push this around too much. I just want to leave it in one spot. Okay, I just want to move it very slightly. So I'm pretty happy with this. What I'm going to do is take a piece of clay. Now I recommend if you are a perfectionist, try and use the same color clay. So I got this red clay here. I'm going to use red clay to keep it down. If I have some pieces here that I'm working on, like this small white piece here. Like I wouldn't use red clay on the white if it really mattered to me to keep this pure and clean, especially if someone's I'm doing this for, one could say, commission purposes. And the person I'm doing a commission for is particular, or persnickety, one could say. So you want to try and use corresponding clay. However, if this is your own work for you and you are not that persnickety, use whatever clay you have handy. It doesn't really matter, especially if you know you're going to glaze it a dark color. It's really up to your comfort level of aesthetics. So don't feel like it has to be a hard and fast rule. But if someone's paying you to do it, it might be easier if you just make sure you use corresponding color clay. Anyway, I'm going to squeeze this into a coil, then I'm going to break it down to another coil. Normally I do this on my thighs, but that's out of screenshot, so I'm just going to give it a quick little roll here and a squeeze, and then I'm going to put this on either side of the piece like so. Okay, what I'm going to do is push down, and this is what I came up with a while back. I'm going to use oppositional force. So as you can see, I'm doing this way, then this way, this way, then this way. All right, and that's to make sure that it doesn't just push off, right? If I just did this, the pressure when I get to about here is going to push this forward, and I got to recenter the whole thing. So I do this in oppositional force like so, and now I'm good, right? So this is going to stay there. Another important thing when it comes to trimming, you want to try and make sure that your pieces of clay that you're going to use to stick are the same level of wetness, dryness, however you want to look at it, as the piece itself. If you have a really dry piece and you have really wet clay, that's really not going to stick, and you're going to end up using a whole lot of clay. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But ideally, if you can have it similar, that's going to help you out a lot as well. Okay. A lot of standard toolkits have a smaller version of this double loop tool that I'm going to use, but this is what I have with me in my studio. And I'm going to use the rounded double loop tool, and you'll note it if you have this in your toolkit, that's just about like half of this. So what I'm going to do is hold it like a knife. I'm going to start in the middle, work my way out, and then round myself down, okay? I like to keep my left hand on the side of the piece, and I extend my thumb, and I'm going to make contact this way. This way I'm feeling what's going on in the piece. If you notice, I'm only doing maybe 20-25% of the wheel speed. I'm not going fast. And then I start here. I work my way out. And then as I get to the edge, I start rolling down. And that's it. Just so you know, this piece of clay is at a perfect leather hardness. I was able to watch it, monitor it, and that's why I'm doing this video right now at this time of day. Doesn't matter to you, but I'm doing it now because it's just right, okay? You'll know if it's too wet because it'll start sticking and it won't peel off, and you'll know if it's too dry because it'll start flaking off. If ever possible, try and do it at this very nice leather hardness where it's not really that wet and it's not that dry, okay? I'd invite you to touch the piece, but this is video and you can't, so I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to do this again a second time. And finally, a third time. All I'm trying to do is get this to be nice and clean, okay? I'm just trying to get something smooth, something round, something enjoyable to the touch. That'll be good, all right? Now, if this is all that you do, that's perfectly fine. There is no rule, as far as I know, that you need to have a foot on something, okay? And if someone ever tells you that there is a rule that you must have a foot on your pot, you are more than welcome to go tell them to go fuck themselves, in my opinion. Because there is no rule. There is no pottery jail. There is no rule. You make the pots you want them to look like, okay? This is your work. You're in control of this, all right? So let's say this is as far as you want to go. Make sure it's smooth. You're good. If you want to then put your name on it, go for it. If you want to do a design, for instance, I have a student at Shot Play Ceramic Studio. Her name, well, I don't know if she wants me to say her name, but I'm just going to call her my student because that's what she is. She does a particular geometric design, and she'll carve a geometric design right over here. And that's how she identifies her pieces. Perfectly good way to do it. Some people I know like to use stamps, and they'll just stamp it here. And you can have a perfectly flat bottom, stamp it, that's it. You're done. Easy way to go. You can also do some carving if you want. A friend of mine used to carve like this sort of natural pattern into pieces. Like that. That was his way of doing a foot every once in a while if he was feeling it for whatever reason, maybe particularly lazy. It's up to you. Okay? So you can stop at this point. That's perfectly okay. I'm not going to. I'm going to keep going. I.e., that's why I made this pretty thick to allow me to do this several times. Okay? So I'm going to do my 3 pulls again. I switched to this side just to focus on this flat portion right over here. Okay? Now this is not my typical trimming just because I'm trying to get rid of something I'm doing before. All right. So now I'm back to more or less where I was. The first foot I'm going to show you is what's called a hidden foot. Okay, and you're going to see this on mugs pretty often. You're going to see this on anything really cylindrical. I'm actually looking around the studio to see if I have anything that's a good example of a hidden foot. Here you go. This is the bottom of my hand lotion. And as you see here, you have this ring and then nothing. That's a hidden foot, and you see them on products all the time. And now that you know what they're called, you might recognize it a little bit more. Hidden foot, right? As you can see, it goes straight here. There's a little bit of a roundness, but boom, just an indent over here, all right? Again, if you were to be drinking from a coffee mug, you're going to see that pretty often. Here's another example, okay? Carved here or indented here, and here's the raising over here. So that's a hidden foot, okay? The way to do this, really very simple. If you are uncertain on how far to do this, start with your pen tool, carve a line, see if you like the look of the line. Now, after years of practice, I almost always go about a 1/4 inch in. Okay, that's my recommendation. Do a 1/4 inch, and then you're good. All right. I would typically, for myself, go straight here with the square side of my double loop tool. All right. And I would just hold it like a pen. Again, left hand on the side. If you're right-handed, you would do it like this, of course. I'm sorry, if you're left-handed, you would do it like this. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to carve that one line. Good to go. All right. From here, I'm then going to switch to my loop side, holding it still like a pen. I'm going to start in the middle, go once, and slowly work my way out. There should never be a rush. If you see, I've got this nice, consistent line just working its way outward, right? There's no actual spiral pattern. If you're getting a spiral pattern, which looks like this, right? I don't know if you can see that if it picks it up. But you see how fast I went? That has created a spiral pattern. So I'm very slow. I am not trying to move my hands quickly at all in this endeavor. I'm very slowly just purposely moving it. Now this will create these ridges. That's fine. Some people like the ridges as part of their aesthetic, and you can keep it there. If you do not want to keep the ridges, I then switch back to the flat side over here. I'm going to do this again. See what I mean? Now this starts taking away some of the ridges. I'll do it one more time. And this time I'm going even lighter, right? Now some people want to know how much pressure. You just want to put as much pressure to start having it pull up. You don't want to push down into this like deeply, just enough pressure to create or to pull up, trim away some of the clay. Just enough, okay? Now I could call this done foot. Once again, this is it. I'm done. I've made my hidden foot. I'm good. Again, I can put my name here, blah, blah, blah. Or I can do some design, or I can stamp it with whatever. This will be good for me. This is fine. However, if I don't like this foot, or rather, I was intending another foot, which I'm going to show you now. This is another way to do a foot, okay? Just so you know, the left hand is here for two reasons. One, it helps me guide the tool, and two, if this were to ever like get caught, sometimes you have a piece of clay here that's a little persnickety and it gets caught and then this pulls off. I can catch it very easily. So that's another reason why I'm keeping my left hand here. Anyway, if I want to do a more pronounced foot, which will have an inside and an outside, the last one just had an inside, I can carve a small line again and then a small line again. See? So again, about a 1/4 inch in, and then from there about a 1/4 inch from here. And now I have an inside and I have an outside. Okay? Again, if I was just doing this for the purpose of a production piece, I would have just carved here, here, and I'm good to go. Okay? But if you are not sure, use a pen tool, carve a couple of lines, see what you like. Okay? See what looks right to you, then you smooth away the lines, and then you start carving. So it's a good way to do a little bit of a sketch, if you will. All right, again, I'm going to start with my loop tool round side. I'm going to hold it like a pen, have my hand over here, guide my hand in with a thumb, and I'm going to go a couple of times outward. Once. Twice. I'm very careful about starting in the center. I try not to push down too hard when I start in the center. That is usually the least amount of clay and the most apt place to push through. I'm going to do this one more time. 3 times is more or less the max for me. 3 times and I'm good. 3 times the charm, as you would say. Okay? So I've done 3 times with the loop tool. Again, going to switch over to the square tool, do twice with the square tool. There you go, finished inside of the foot. Now I have this portion over here. I'm going to change my grip. I'm going to hold this more like a knife. See, my index finger is extended. I'm going to be able to push straight down, have my hand a little bit on top, still guiding. I'm going to come in and start pushing straight down. And then curve away. See? I'm going to do that again. Straight down. Curve away. Okay, and you can already see, especially on the side view over here, how this is creating a foot. I'm going to do that one more time. Again, 3 times. It's a good round number. All right. Boom. 3 times. Now I have myself a nice pronounced foot. So after this point, I'm pretty much done using this tool. Okay, now you can go further. You can do more if you want to. But I'm going to say to you, as a word of caution, 3 times here, 2 times here, 3 times here. You're almost never going to go through the bottom. The other thing, too, is also feel it. Okay, you can start feeling when it's got a little bit of give, and it might crack on you, or you might bust through. Right now, it's pretty solid, see? So I'm good. I'm happy. I don't want to do anymore. From here, what I'm going to do is work with what I would call my metal rib of death. All right, and I call it my metal rib of death. My metal rib of death here. The reason I call it a metal rib of death is I never throw with these things. Maybe you can see how thin that is. See how thin? That is a very fast way to slice your fingers open. And that is not a fun thing to do. I am not a fan of slicing my fingers open. I like my fingers. I work with my hands all the time. So I use this for trimming. I do not use this for throwing. When you throw with it, that is when it becomes a metal rib of death. In terms of trimming, I learned to use this as a trimming tool doing a commission for the owner of Chaplay Ceramic Studio. Her name is Nadej Chaplay. Excellent, amazing potter. One of the most precise potters I've ever met. She is fantastic. And she showed me this trick. That is to use this on the side, and I start working my way up. And I work my way down. This is one of the rare times I actually go up. And what you are hopefully catching here is how nice and smooth this is now. Okay? This is really good for a hidden foot, by the way. If you want to make sure something is really straight, like perfectly straight, you get like one of these. You can tell I've been using this because there's a slight curve in this now. You get one just like this, nice and perfectly straight. You can just hold that right there. And that's really going to straighten out and make sure you have a nice, like this kind of straight. Like that sort of straight. See how straight that is? See? Boom. You just hold that right there. That's a great way to make a nice straight line on your pieces, even on the top. So you did no foot whatsoever, you just want to have perfectly straight, man, that'll help you get there. That'll definitely help you get there. Okay? from here, when I have done this to my satisfaction, the next thing I will do is take a green scrub pad, make sure it's nice and wet. This is a very quick little scrub. That will help soften it up, and then I will take my sponge. I like a mud tool sponge, but again, feel free to use any kind of sponge. Yeah, any kind of sponge will do. I'll take my mud tool sponge and I will smooth it out. And what this will help do is lend a wonderful level of softness and professionalism to the work. Okay, you won't have any harsh lines. It'll look nice and smooth and soft. And believe me, you might not think you want that, but it really helps. Right? There's no harsh lines now. It's going to be very comfortable to the touch. It's going to be awesome. So from here, I'll then sign it, and this time I'll really sign it. So, okay. Now, there's other things that you can do with this. This is not technically over. It'll be over for me at the moment, but there are other things you can do. And especially if you're going to switch to the side view, you can start carving and ornamenting. I learned how to do this kind of this work from another potter. I believe her shop is still Misfit Dynamo. Natalia Martinez is her name, and she got me hooked on like carving textures, and I really like carving textures now because of her. All right, so if you check her out, Misfit Dynamo, I believe, is the name of her shop on Etsy. All right, so I can do just simple geometric carvings. That's a good way to go, right? And I can just carve down. And I can continue doing a pattern like so. Now another possible pattern I may want to do, I'm going to just carve some of this away. Again, left it thick on purpose. See, using this. That's good enough for what I'm about to show you. I can also do sort of like a Jackson Pollock chaos idea here. See how I'm starting to create some really interesting texture this way? See what I mean? So this is a fun way to add something that make your work even more unique than it was before. I mean, it's already quote unquote unique because you made it, right? No matter how many pots you make, you're always going to have your sense of touch to it. But when you start adding in other aspects like carving in some texture, man, this really helps it look more like you and less like everyone else. And if you're working out of a communal studio, that's really important. I'm going to tell you right now. Because even though no two pots are really going to be exactly alike, they're going to look a hell of a lot alike. And then when you go down to find where your work is, and you can't, it's because someone probably didn't check the bottom where your name should be, and they just took the piece because it's like, oh, it looks like everyone else's. I think that's mine. I made a pot that looked like that. I'm using white clay. Now, another thing that you can do at this stage, I really like how that came out, actually. Another thing that you can do at this stage is add in color. Now, this is red clay. Typically, I would leave it because I want to keep the red clay looking nice and red. But you can also paint on here and do some carving and stuff. But I'm going to get into that in the next lesson. All right. Right now, we're going to just focus on this. Another thing I want to show you that you are allowed to do. People may tell you you are not, and I'm going to tell you you are. You can flip this way, center the top again, and if you have issues with the top, if you have issues with the inside, let's say you got the inside looking exactly the way you wanted it to look. I'm sorry, you got the outside looking exactly the way you wanted it to look, but man, it is still way too heavy. What I'm about to show you may be very controversial to some, and I don't give a shit. it is to trim the inside. Now this is where having a long tool like this helps. And I'm just going to look on the inside here and just start working my way up in that crevice. Okay? They will tell you you can't do this, and I will tell you that's full of shit. You can do this. Okay? There's nothing wrong. It's your pot. The only pain in the ass about trimming the inside is that it really starts collecting very quickly. As before, it was coming out. Here, it's just going to stay right in the middle. All right? There's nothing wrong with trimming the inside. It's your work. You do what you got to do. Someone's going to say, like, well, you're really not that good at throwing. Who cares? Who cares? You got to make the work that you want to make. That's the important thing. All right? This is also a good point. Let's say the rim's a little messed up. Don't worry about it. This is where you can either trim the rim again. This is where you can take a sponge and smooth the rim out. Perfectly fine to do. All right? Now, the last thing I'm going to say is that if you do want to add some color to this and do some painting in terms of decorative texture, this is an okay time to do it. I'm going to grab a real quick color here. I got ivory beige. Right? You can do this one of two ways. You can either just apply like so. That's a really great way to just coat something neatly. Or if there was a specific spot where you're going to do some sort of particular decorative look, you can then do it like that. You may have seen other potters do things like that. It's up to you. In my particular case, since I'm playing around with it, I'm not going to care. I'm going to have fun. Which is ultimately probably why you started doing pottery anyway. You want to have fun. Right? What's kind of cool is you start getting some of this here. I'm actually going to go lower. See what I mean? But you can then carve away, let this dry, and then carve it away or carve something into it if you wanted to. You don't have to do a full coat of anything. Again, this is your piece. You make it the way you want it to look. Sound like the Bob Ross of pottery. There's no mistakes. It's happy trees, happy pots. I'm not quite getting it in here, so I'm just going to add that in. Now, if I want to do some carving, though, after I've painted it, I got to let it dry a little. I have to let this dry. If I start trying to do anything right now, it's really going to be a mess, okay? So it's important to let it dry and respect the process and time. But that's pretty much as I'm going to show you today. This is what you can do. You can trim it, you can carve it, you can add color to it, you can carve it off the wheel, so you can hold it like this, and if you wanted to do some carving, that's perfectly okay too. You know what I mean? Right? I don't have to keep it on the wheel to do some carving. I can carve by hand. Perfectly viable way to work. If you have a drawing background, you can do that as well. So everyone knows. Right? This is usually what I like to draw. I like to draw a little bird. It's called sgraffito, where I add on some color and then I do a little drawing. Okay. that about wraps it up today.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope today's lesson on trimming helps you out. Remember, thick is not a bad thing. You can always carve later after trimming if it feels a little too thick. If you like today's lesson and you want to help support me and support ceramic education, you can always come and find me at Shopplay Ceramic Studio or Island Pottery Studio for private lessons. There'll be links below. You can become a patron of mine on Patreon. It's patreon.com/SperanoArts. I have all different patron levels from $1 and higher, and we can do some coaching via Skype. Sorry, I had a little brain fart there. So there are a lot of things that you can do. You can visit my website, SperanoArts.com, for corresponding blogs about this topic as well. So check me out, and I look forward to working with you in the future.